On this episode of Still Loading.
Hey, you mean like Christmas? You popped your plunger, big brother. It's the middle of August.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I am your host, Josh Koval, and today it is the Christmas/end of the year retrospective episode. And since it's a tradition now, I couldn't do an end of the year retrospective without my good old buddy, my brother from the Great White North, TJ from the Hodder Show. TJ, how are you doing today?
Dino bummer, dude. I'm doing fantastic, buddy. It's so good to see you, man.
It's good seeing you too, man. I mean, we don't get to talk as much as we used to because we're both working all the time. Well, between me and the kid, and you and like fucking 4 jobs and like everything. And I'm counting the podcast as one of those, so it's like 3 plus the podcast.
Labor of love, and I mean, you know, like we still try and text once in a while, and I mean, I always feel like I still talk to you because, like, I do check out the show, so obviously, so like, you know, I keep up with what you're doing. But that's the thing as you get older, right? It's like I just had this conversation with a dear friend of mine, like who lives in the same province as me, and it's like, man, like we maybe talk once a month or a couple times a month, and it's like, we used to talk every day. What the hell happened? Like, it's just getting older,
life,
right? You know?
Just life, man. But we are here to talk about, we're combining the Christmas and end of the year retrospective episodes all into this one big end of the year blowout. So we're going to be first talking about video game cartoon Christmas special. And these, by and large, all of the Christmas specials for video game cartoons. Well, first off, video game cartoons by and large are not very good. Second off, you're asking him to do a Christmas special, which makes it even more hokey on a shitty cartoon, based off of a shitty cartoon. So it's like you're just doubling down on the levels of bad with this. So we are going to be covering today The Night Before Cave Christmas, which is from the Super Mario World cartoon. Now, both TJ and I have not watched this cartoon at all. I didn't really grow up with it. I'm assuming, TJ, you didn't, correct?
I sure didn't. I had heard about it, and I just have to say before I let you go any further, I would like to throw this out there for everybody listening here, the wonderful fans of the Still Loading podcast. Josh, if I did something to you previously to make you so angry with me that you made me watch this just so I could be a part of your end of the year retrospect, whatever I did, I'm sorry, because I've done some terrible things to myself as far as with watching
this is a cinematic masterpiece.
It's wonderful. It's really fun. And if you guys haven't seen this episode, you should go check it out, and we'll wait.
It's completely free on YouTube, by the way. All of the stuff, a lot of
yes.
This is kind of in the same spirit. I mean, I've been doing these Christmas video game cartoon episodes for Christmas now for a few years, and we just kind of go through beat by beat. But this one's a shorter one. It's only about 12 minutes long, so I figured, which is why it would be perfect to group with our retrospective end of the year retrospective, because it is such a short episode. Because it's only half of an episode. Now, with that said, it's 12 minutes, but I took 3.5 fucking pages of notes. And admittedly on a small piece of notepad, but it's 3.5 pages. So.
But you've also been doing, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this, but you and your buddy, oh my gosh,
Dexter.
Yeah, I was just about to say Dexter. You guys have been doing these awesome kind of like recap episodes with the miniseries for Captain N. So like, it's kind of fun. What did I just say?
No, I'm just. You're right.
I thought I messed up the way you asked.
No,
I was like, wait, what?
You were good.
Okay.
I
was like, did I just say the wrong thing? Sorry.
I'm just laughing at this stupid idea of doing a rewatch series on Captain N. Like, I don't know why Dexter and I were like, this is going to be great. But legit, we have so much fun every time we do this. Like, I text Dexter all the time, like, dude, it's Captain N week. Captain N week is next week. That means we get to watch both of these cartoons and then just rage about, well, not rage, but like make fun of it for
Yeah, and
a
yeah.
2 or 3 hour recording session on a weekend. It's fantastic.
And I mean, they are great because you guys are hilariously entertaining and they're just so ridiculous. And I watched 30 seconds of one, and we'll maybe get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I just want to throw it out there. Like, because you guys have been doing these recaps, I think you're dialed in now. So you're taking all your notes and you're paying attention to little things. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about
There's
it.
small things that just really make me laugh with this. And what you saw, so it's interesting because Captain N, for the first 2 seasons, each episode was a full length episode. It wasn't
Yeah.
split in 2 like this was. This Super Mario World episode was split with a Captain N episode, and the Mario World episode was 12 minutes, and the Captain N episode was also 12 minutes.
It sure was.
And so they kind of combined these two together, which is not like what they did with the original Captain N show. So, or at least with the first 2 seasons. So they crammed a lot into this, but it's done. I actually, for how much they crammed into this, there was a couple moments in this short that were really fucking slow, that I was wondering, when is this going to move on to something more interesting? And I'm amazed at that because it's only 12 minutes. How do you make something boring? How do you slow the plot down that slow, like to something that boring, when you only have 12 minutes to tell a story? Like, that's impressive, but well, impressively bad. But so the whole premise, let's start from the top, right? Let's dive right into this. Super Mario World, The Night Before Cave Christmas. Now, what's interesting about the Mario cartoons, right, is that there's 3 Mario TV shows around this time. I don't know if they ran concurrently, but they all came out around the same time in the late 80s, early 90s. There was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which actually had a wrestler dude. It actually had a wrestler in it. It was a combination of live action and cartoons, and the live action segments had Captain Lou Albano as Mario.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not. I though when Dexter and I finish Captain N, I kind of want us to do that as the next rewatch series. Like, I think we should just go through video game cartoons, and that's like a permanent. That's like a staple of the show going forward. Like, once a month, Dexter and I just continue on through a rewatch series of some video game cartoon. Right? I think that'd be really fun. Anyway. So you have the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and then you have, for only 13 episodes, Super Mario Brothers 3, the cartoon. Just Super Mario Bros. 3, based off that game, which is kind of funny because it's not like there was a Super Mario Bros. 1 cartoon or a 2 cartoon. There was Super Mario Brothers Super Show, and then Super Mario Brothers 3. And then they had Super Mario World, which was the Super Nintendo game, and you can tell they kind of borrowed a lot of the music for this, which I thought was kind of cool. Some nice nods to the actual music from the video game. It doesn't save the cartoon at all. It's still awful. But the first thing that happens in this is that Yoshi, which you actually get to meet Yoshi, and his voice is awful in this, but Yoshi and some caveman named Oogtar are fighting over
Oogtar.
And then it splits in 2. So the opening scene is Oogtar and Yoshi fighting, and this is what I call classic 90s insult comedy. And it's always shit like dino breath and it's something breath or brains or like lame brain, shit like that. Like, it's just not a great it's not good. And they're arguing, and I thought in Princess Toadstool, which is later she became Princess Peach, but at the time she was still called Princess Toadstool in the Mario canon. She she notices, her and Mario notice that everyone else in the village, in Cave Village or whatever it is, start arguing as well. And they are like, oh man, because Oogtar and Yoshi are fighting, it's spread to everyone else. And Princess Toadstool says, it's like Oogtar started an epidemic. And I'm like, that hits a little too close to
It's
home.
like,
Okay, lady?
that does not age well. Doesn't age well at all.
It does not. And fun fact, the voice of Mario, the voice of Mario in this cartoon. It's not Charles Martinet who's the current voice of Mario.
No, certainly is not.
The dude who did the voice of Mario, his name, he's Canadian, and he's credited as the most Canadian name I've ever heard, Walker Boone.
Walker Boone.
And he died actually this year,
Oh, jeez.
in January of 2021, January 29th, 2021, he passed away. But his real name was not Walker Boone. I forget what it was, but it I just the name Walker Boone made me laugh really hard. But at the same time, rest in peace. Uh,
Rest in peace, good sir.
his real
He
name
had
was
a great voice. Just
oh yeah.
it was weird.
It was
Weird
weird though because
Mario.
didn't Luigi sound more Italian than
Yes,
Mario? Stereotypically Italian,
Luigi.
mind
Like
you.
that was my thing right away. Like I don't mean to derail you, but like
No, no, no.
for me, the thing that stood out the most was the voice acting. And like, yes, I understand it was a long time ago and voice acting was very different and blah blah blah. But like I when you have Luigi who kind of sort of sounds how you would think Luigi would sound in real life, you know, like he's got a little
The
Italian
super
vibe
Italian
happening. Yeah.
stereotype, yeah.
And then Mario just sounds like
A
a deli
guy.
meat guy from Brooklyn. Like it's just like, hello, Luigi, what do you want on your pie? Like
He
it's
doesn't
like,
even sound like that. Like
no, he's like, yeah, yeah,
he speaks with almost without like he almost speaks without some type of an accent. Like without
yeah, yeah.
like there's no regional dialect for this Mario
It just
voice. And I
sounds
don't know
like
why.
he sounds like a deli owner from like I can't even think of where from like I guess like the Midwest or something, wherever they don't have
Yeah, I
like
could see that.
very like where like from like where you're from. Like to me, you don't have like like I don't hear you
Well,
with like a
so
regional accent.
I'm outside. Near Philly, but I don't have
Yeah,
a Philly accent. At least I
no,
don't
you do
think I
not.
do. I don't say like what is it? I don't call water wooder. That's a Philly thing.
Wooder.
Wooder. Like WOODER, the Wooder fountain.
Yeah,
And use and shit like that. I always forget what all the different. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so Uktar and Yoshi are fighting. It for some reason they decide that that anger spreads to the rest of the village, and the rest of you see a panning shot of the village fighting, and just some of the weirdest. Like the one fight is literally just this dude standing there, stone faced expression, right? Stone faced expression, and the other dude is just making faces with his mouth, like he's pulling his lip
yeah.
hard, and I'm like, what the fuck is it? It was really weird, and Mario comes up with the brilliant idea. His solution to this, to get everyone to stop fighting, is that since everyone's nicer around the holidays, let's celebrate Christmas.
Let's lie to them and say that it's
And I thought this would like I'll go into a little bit more in a second, but there's something that it didn't irk me, but it's a little you could by reading way too unnecessarily far into this, it's very problematic, and I'll go into it in a second. But Luigi tells him he's crazy because it's in the middle of July, and I quote, "You've popped your plunger."
you pop the plunger, big brother.
I was
So good.
laughing. I'm like, you popped your plunger. What the?
That
All right.
sounds super suggestive.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if I was like, "Hey, Josh, you popped your plunger."
But so he goes, you've popped your plunger, big brother. It's the middle of July. It's super hot, and Mario basically tells him, we're in dinosaur world. Cave people don't know when you're supposed to celebrate Christmas, and so I'm thinking about this, right? He's literally forcing a group of indigenous people to this world
Basically, right?
to conform to his religious holiday. And I say this as a Christian, mind you, but I do think it's kind of insane that he's force feeding this village of people to celebrate Christmas, a holiday they have no fucking idea what it is or what it is. And he literally calls them dumb, but I'm like, well, they won't know when it is.
Because
Like,
they're
so you're
dumb.
literally
That's terrible. Like what? How can you say that, Mario?
I was a little offended on behalf of these fictitious people. Now, by the way, everyone, I know I'm reading too far to this. It's a joke.
But you
Lighten up.
are
Just in
saying
case.
this tongue
Well,
in cheek.
some people are going to take that way too seriously. Like I'm like, like me complaining about like, not I shouldn't, but me like talking about the problematic stuff in it. I'm like, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm going into it for laughs. So
We're
calm
having
the fuck
fun here,
down.
folks.
I know I'm pre-arguing. Essentially,
Pre-arguing.
I made a fake argument up in my head here that someone's going to be mad at me. Some fucking, oh, who cares? It's a cartoon. I'm like,
You
it's a
don't
joke, bro.
understand. Oh my
Anyway,
God.
so the next scene though is Mario hangs a wreath on a rock and then says, "Merry Cave Christmas, everybody," and a single wreath. That was the big takeaway I got from
That
this
was
scene, dude.
one wreath.
There's
And he's like,
no
we're done here.
decoration. He puts a single wreath, and the rock looks like Patrick's home from SpongeBob. It's just
Yes.
this half rock that's like, right? Now,
Oh my
one thing I
God.
want to say before just to backtrack just a smidge, when he's talking about Cave Christmas and he's calling the village people stupid for not knowing when when you're supposed to celebrate Cave
Mhm.
Christmas, uh, he goes like, Luigi says, it's July, it's not time for Christmas, blah blah blah. It cuts to Mario walking up to Utar and Yoshi, who were not a part of this conversation, and just going, "We're going to call it Cave Christmas." Like they knew what they were talking. Like they were a part of the conversation the whole time. He just walks in and declares, "We're going to call it Cave Christmas." And understandably, Utar and Yoshi are like, "What are you talking about?"
But
Like
like they're
what?
so used to Mario shit at this point
They're so
that they're
used to
just like,
Mario just
whatever.
starting conversations,
Yeah.
like speaking to them like they were in the middle of some conversation that he never had with them.
And they can't say anything to him because he gets super like defensive. It's like, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? I'm Mario.
You notice another through line of just kind of Mario being, I don't know why this made me think of it. Mario being slightly defensive every time he would do something, and he was like, "Just like how it was back in Brooklyn, eh, Luigi?"
Yeah,
And
like
every time Luigi's like, "I don't think so, Mario." Every single time.
I have several questions I need you to answer for me,
All
okay?
right,
Because I'm
I
super confused
promise I
about
won't
two
answer them,
things.
but shoot, but go
Okay,
ahead.
do your best. I understand that to make things more realistic, you got to make the Mario Brothers from somewhere real, right?
Yeah.
But I thought they were from the Mushroom Kingdom. Why are they now from Brooklyn in this fairy tale world of Dino Land? And why are they in Dino Land?
So Dino Land is actually one of the worlds in Super Mario World. There's like different
Yeah.
lands
Yeah.
in like that you traverse to. So Dino Land is a direct reference to the game. Princess Toadstool is from the Mushroom Kingdom. I think they mentioned like they were on vacation from the Mushroom Kingdom to Dino Land, and that's how they end up here. In like I ended up watching some other episodes just because I was had a rough week,
Because
and
you
so
enjoy it, just be
I
honest.
know I do. I somewhat
Yeah, no,
ironically,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
but I was having a rough week, so I was like, man, I just want to watch some stupid fucking cartoons, and so I put that on. But I'm gonna have to look it up. But I'm pretty sure that Mario and Luigi are from Brooklyn, even in the original game. But hold on, Super Mario Bros. Manual. I want to see if I can look that up real fast and
See, because
just
like I was always under the assumption that they were from the Mushroom Kingdom. And
you would
like,
think.
yeah, I don't really understand why, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find. I found the manual, but nothing's really like given me. Oh, object of the game / game description. So this has probably been read a billion other places, but I've never actually read the description in the video game manual for the original Super Mario Brothers for the NES. So here it is.
Lay it on me.
One day, the kingdom of the peaceful Mushroom Kingdom was invaded by the Koopa, a tribe of turtles famous for their black magic. The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people. Oh yeah, I do know this part. This is a dark thing, so listen to this. The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people were turned into mere stones, bricks, and even field horsehair plants. Did I Okay, whatever. Field horsehair plants. I don't know. And the Mushroom Kingdom fell into ruin. The only one who can undo the magic spell on the Mushroom people and return them to their natural selves is Princess Toadstool, the daughter of the Mushroom King. Unfortunately, she is presently in the hands of the great Koopa Turtle King, Bowser, later on, obviously.
Get Bowser.
Mario, the hero of the story, maybe, it says maybe in parentheses, I guess in case you fail.
If you
Here's
fail,
about
yeah.
here's about the mushroom people's plight and sets out on a quest to free the mushroom princess from the evil Koopa and restore the fallen kingdom of the mushroom people. You are Mario. It's up to you to save the mushroom people from the black magic of Koopa. Okay, so it doesn't mention Brooklyn at all. But the dark thing about this is it said that all the civilians, all the mushroom people got turned into the bricks. What does Mario break
He
in the game?
breaks them. He's
That
killing all these
he's
motherfuckers
killing
'cause he
all
don't
the
care.
people.
Give me your money. Woohoo! Let them go.
That it's one
Give
of
me
those
your money,
things where
bitch.
like in a lot of like, a lot of the retro gaming podcasts I talk about, they reference that, but I always found it really funny just because it's not something that's really talked about all that often, but at the same time it kind of
That
is.
Mario's a mass murderer of innocent people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh
mean, we
yeah.
know he's a mass murderer of Koopas and turtles and whatnot, but I guess Koopas and turtles are the same thing. But Koopa turtle-esque people and Goombas and whatnot, but he's also just murdering innocent people left, right, and center. Right on. Good to know.
Okay, so back to the cartoon. Like I said, Mario butts in and says, we're going to call it Cave Christmas. And then he actually proceeds to describe what Christmas is to Uktar, so we're going to get to Uktar a little bit more. He's obnoxious as fuck character. I hate that character so much.
Dino bummer, dude.
Yeah. That's actually the next quote because Mario says only good kids get gifts for Christmas. And he goes, Dino bummer, dude. And then it cuts to the scene of Mario hanging the single wreath.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, Uktar's name gets turned into a joke. And at first, I thought, did they really just name this character just to reverse engineer this joke? But he's been named. He's in other episodes of the cartoon, like 3 or 4 others. So this is clear. Unless this was the first episode Uktar shows up in, I don't think they reverse engineered his name just for this joke. But we'll get into it. So while all this is happening, while Mario is hanging the wreath, King Koopa sees what's going on and decides to try to stop it, tries to throw a wrench in it. And I quote, "What's that pipe squeezer up to?" I don't know why. That's like the best euphemism for calling someone a masturbator or something like that.
I totally
Is that even a term, a masturbator? I don't know.
It is now. I'm using that in my everyday life.
A pipe
what
squeezer.
Are you doing, you fucking pipe
you
squeezer?
Fucking pipe squeezer.
What are you
Get
doing,
real
you pipe
hostile with them.
squeezer? Yeah, like be super angry. Oh my
you probably
goodness!
squeeze your pipe all the time, don't you?
Oh, jeez.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That's really messed up.
He calls
What's that pipe squeezer up to now? And Bowser sounds like he's from Brooklyn too.
I know, right?
Or King Koopa.
Then it cuts to Mario and the cave people trying to cut down Christmas trees. And did you notice what they were using to cut down the Christmas tree with?
They're using a fish, like a fish bone.
A fish
I'm like,
skeleton.
what are they doing?
I'm like, okay, I kind of see it. Like the ribs of the fish are kind of like the teeth on a saw blade. So
but like,
pulling back.
You don't think they have stone? Like what?
You would think,
that threw me off too.
It's so fucking dumb.
Like, what the hell is happening?
It made me laugh pretty hard, though. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those things. So there's a moment in a lot of these cartoons, even these bad video game cartoons, where they do something surprisingly imaginative with the world that you're placed into. And I actually think that's one of it. Like it's a bunch of cave people. So what would they use as a tool to cut a tree down? Kind of
a fish, of
that,
course.
I mean, it's dumb, but at the same time, you could kind of see the imagination behind it. So I'm kind of like, that's a little creative. That's a fun idea. I kind of like that. But by and large, there's lots of, it's more dumb than good. But every now and then there's stuff like that. I'm like, that's a little clever. I kind of like that. It's dumb, but it's still fun. So now, while they're cutting down all those trees, King Koopa and with his son, Bully Koopa, is watching them. And Bully Koopa wants the Christmas trees for themselves. And this quote made me laugh. He goes, I want, what does he say? Hold on, I wrote it down. It's I want one, King Dad. And I noticed, I was like, because he's King Koopa, so he's calling them Dad, so King Dad. I'm like, that's fucking stupid. But then I watched a different Mario World episode, and all his fucking kids call him King Dad.
That's weird.
I'm
Just
going
do
to
one
ask
or the
my
other.
kid to call me King Dad. No, I'm
Call
just
me
kidding.
King Dad. I'm gonna ask my
Like,
kid
how
to call me
pretentious do
Captain.
you have to be to get your kids to call you King Dad?
You refer to me as King Dad. I will also answer to you Captain and the greatest person who ever lived.
King Dad, Captain Father,
Captain
and
Father. Captain Father. Ugh.
and Lieutenant Papa.
Lieutenant Papa.
Any one of
Lieutenant
those
Papa.
works, even though
Any of
King
those
is the
works.
highest rank out of all of them.
Whatever you decide, whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with.
Right? King Dad, Captain Father, and Lieutenant Papa.
Lieutenant Papa. Oh God.
So while all this is happening, then Mario, Toadstool, and Luigi are making toys. They're making these kind of cool little like stone dioramas where you twist the dials and like it moves the
Some pretty
diorama across.
mechanical stuff happening. I'm like, how are they doing this? I thought they were plumbers. Like what?
Well, they're making toys for kids.
And what is Princess Toadstool's background in engineering? Apparently, like what the hell's going on? Like all of a sudden she's just like
she's a toy engineer.
I'm an engineer. Like what?
I mean, they can do anything. They're the Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
So while this is all happening, Uktar is kind of sneaking around and like looking at stuff and just being obnoxious. And
Uktar wants presents.
And Luigi kicks him out, and Uktar ends up sneaking back in and tries to take all the good presents for himself. And while this is happening, King Koopa comes in with Bully Koopa, and he's like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna get," and Uktar's like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna get caught." So he runs into the bag and hides in there, and King Koopa takes the bag, so he gets caught with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna steal these presents and before he steals them, you see him like menacing in a window. He's like, and he says, Princess Toadstool says, "Oh, I can't wait for all the cave kids to get this for Cave Christmas," which is a fucking stupid line, but whatever. And but then King Koopa goes, "Well, you just wait, Princess. All these these gifts are gonna go to my Koopa kids for Koopa Christmas." Because that's supposed to be menacing. I don't fucking know. It's dumb.
For Koopa Christmas. Then he just stands there for a second, staring at them like a freak. Mm-hmm.
And while Koopa steals the presents, it cuts over to Mario dressing up as Santa, and this is one of those. And this is one of those lines where he goes, "What do you think of this, Luigi?" And Luigi's like, "Don't wear it in Brooklyn." Or something like that.
He says it again, like that's something he says all the time,
all over the.
Don't wear it in Brooklyn, Mario.
Oh, one line I forgot to mention, just was in regards to King Koopa. And it happened right before this. After he goes, those cave kids are going to whimper when they find out I cooped all of their toys.
I cooped.
This is, dude, if you come back on for any more of these shitty video game cartoon episodes, you're going to find that is a running theme where they turn the character's name into a verb of whatever they do.
Can I do that?
TJ'd? What would be yours?
Or hoddered.
You got hoddered?
You got hoddered, son.
What would that be a verb for? Like, if someone got hoddered, what would that be?
They are interrupted and told a really shitty story no one wants to hear.
An anticlimactic story?
Yeah, that I take 15 minutes to tell. Yeah. That's
do you remember that time at band camp?
So do you remember like, oh, yo, dude, by the way, I got to tell you this really wicked story that happened the other day. So have I ever told you the story about when I was a kid? And also, by the way, like I wasn't actually, I'm doing a bit,
I was listening. I'm like, I can't tell I think he's doing a bit, so I'm going to roll with it, but I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, no, that would be what it is. And so what would be joshed?
Josh is, if you're joshing somebody, that's already a thing.
So I kind of feel like that's like, because like,
but if we had to make up something new,
okay.
If you got
Kovold, that's dangerously close to something else. I don't like that. I don't know. Kovold.
Well, it would be like you were told a story. You were over explained a simple concept.
You got Kovold, son.
Stop koveling me, bro.
Stop koveling me, bro. It's better than being hoddered. I'd rather be kovold than hoddered.
Dude, I over-explain every fucking thing. I have training experience at work, so I'm pretty sure that's where my over-explaining tendencies come from, but it's still no fun to deal with, especially my wife hates it. But anyway, so...
What a coincidence. My wife hates any time I hodder her. Ha, ha, Ha 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 ha
Merry Christmas.
ha
Oh my god.
ha.
So Koopa steals all the presents, takes him back to his lair, and they actually name it like Mario says we have to go. Mario and
Yeah, they
Toadstool
call
after
it something weird.
it's like something castle. I forget what he wrote. I thought it was stupid though. I didn't write it down. But it's not like King Koopa's lair. It's like Laser Castle or some shit like
Yeah,
that. That's not what they
neon
call it.
castle.
Neon Castle.
We gotta
that's
go
what
to
it
we
is.
gotta go to Neon Castle.
Now I wonder if that's what it's called in the game. Because if that's what it's called in Super Mario World, then okay, fair enough. But if it's not, that's weird.
I'm looking it up.
So no, while you're looking it up, so then he opens the bag, Uktar falls out, and they kind of have a weird fight, bickering thing. And the one thing I thought was weird. So he opens the bag, and those are all presents stolen from Mario, Toadstool, and Luigi. And supposedly the idea is that they made all of those presents for the cave kids, right? And Koopa stole all the kids. Koopa stole all the presents for the Koopa kids. The one of the presents that Uktar opens is a bomb. It's a bomb. And then Koopa goes, wait, you weren't supposed to go off until Christmas morning. And I'm thinking, you stole all these presents from Mario and Luigi. Does that mean they packed a bomb into a present kid?
Because they're sadistic.
Sadistic?
Sadistic. What did I say? Statistic?
I think you said
they're
statistic.
statistics. There's statistics showing. No, because they're sadistic. They
But
want to
then
kill all these people.
Bowser makes it sound like he's the one that packed it because he says you weren't supposed to go off until Christmas morning. So who the fuck packed this present? He stole it.
Doesn't Uktar say something like that? I feel like Uktar's like, who gives a bomb to their kids or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. He said
Dino bummer, dude.
He's Dino breath, probably.
Dino breath.
And I was just so fucking baffled by that. And I literally paused the episode. I'm like, who gave who a present? Did he make a present and stick it in the bag that he stole? I don't know. That's not shown. Why am I overthinking this? It's a stupid cartoon.
I don't know. But speaking of overthinking things, so Bowser's Castle is called Bowser's Castle, not to be confused with Neo Bowser Castle.
So they call it Neon
Maybe it's
Castle.
Neo or Neon Castle, because apparently Neo Castle was in Mario and Luigi Dream Team, which was long after the cartoon.
Yeah, with long after Super Mario.
Yeah.
World.
So what the hell? I don't know. Whatever. Anyway. Moving on.
Anyway, so Bowser captures Uktar, strings him up by a vine over this pit, over this monster to slowly feed him to this monster. And this is where the joke that I mentioned before, where I thought they reverse engineered Uktar's name because they said, remember, Uktar spelled backwards is rat goo. And I was thinking, did you literally name this fucker Uktar just for that shitty joke? Did you set up this whole guy's trajectory just so you could call him Rat Goo in the Christmas episode?
They probably were hanging on to that one for a long time. Like one day, it's like, let's say we're at Nintendo, whoever made this god awful train wreck, and we're all sitting there and we're just like, okay, we got to think of a name for this kid. Yo, we should call him Uktar.
What
kind of name is that? So that when we can call him Rat Goo at a later date.
Fucking genius.
Yo, you deserve a raise. You want to make a Mario
$10,000.
game? He's like, yeah, sure. We should make a movie too.
We should make a movie. That movie, I did an episode on that movie with the geeks from No Geeks Allowed. R.I.P. No Geeks Allowed.
What? I've never heard about this.
Yeah, I did an episode with them on it. It's on the feed. You can find it. Hold on, I'll look up the episode number.
Yo. Shout outs to the geeks, man. I love those guys and I miss them.
Yeah, they've been on a long hiatus, which is a bummer, but
it's not just a bummer. It's a dino bummer, dude.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna say that 100 more times before this episode's over.
Your fiance is gonna fucking kill you by this.
Oh, it's a new voice. I have all these voices I do on a regular basis now, right? And that one's gonna be added to the repertoire.
Fantastic, I think.
Yeah, I have Lola Scumpy from Big Mouth.
I forgot you do all that. Okay, so this episode with the geeks came out in 2018, actually, December 6th.
So what the hell? How did I miss that?
It was over 3 years ago now.
Jeez.
So yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Anyway, I should have given you the episode number. That would have been the smart thing
That's
to do.
okay. No, that's okay. I'll find it. Don't worry about it.
But anyway, actually, I can find it real quick. Anyway, it's episode 94. So Uktar gets captured. He's strung up by a vine over this monster pit, and that's where the Raku joke comes in. And Mario and Yoshi are flying. Yoshi is pulling Mario's stone. It's a stone sled. It's a stone sleigh, which I thought was a weird. I get it's caveman world, but that's really fucking heavy. I'm sorry.
How is Yoshi with these little dumb little wings? He's just pulling it along like it's nothing.
It's very strange. Well, he's flying with it. He's literally
he's flying,
causing this entire stone sled to float. Oh, before Mario brought out the stone sled, this was a weird joke. There's a dude walking a T-Rex. Did you notice that?
Yes.
There's a dude, this tiny little, and he looks sad as shit. He's so depressed. He's got bags under his eyes, and he's just like sadly like walking this giant fucking dinosaur whose foot's bigger than him. It was such a weird thing.
Well, he's probably lost his entire family to this dinosaur. Why would you have a pet T-Rex?
Every time
That's a terrible idea.
Every time he gives the T-Rex a walk, it steps on another family member and kills.
Yeah, it's like, well, of course he's depressed. I'd be pissed too. Walking around like, I had this stupid dinosaur.
Oh my god, that's funny. So Mario and Yoshi go to Neon Castle. They hear Uktar like screaming, and the way they break in, there's these metal bars, and they have to bend the bars, and there is I don't know what poor animal they got to do this because you can't see it, but it's clearly an animal that he wedges in between the bars and then somehow cranks it so its jaw opens so wide that it forcibly expands the bars. It stretches the bars out. So when we were watching it, I made my wife watch it with me the other night, and she's like, "Talk about a bad case of lockjaw."
Ha 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 ha.
I might actually
That's
cut
gold. That's gold. No, she used to do stand up, man. She's got some funny one-liners.
She's funny.
Talk about a bad case of lockjaw. Thank you. I'm here till Tuesday. Try the meal.
So, it's so funny. But I'm just thinking, this poor fucking animal, dude. Like, what the hell?
Is it like a bird or something?
I know. I don't know what it was. But then they break in finally, and Yoshi makes a fat joke on Mario, which was stupid.
Well, yeah, he says something. He's like, "Hey, give Santa a push," and like that's the only time he sounds kind of Italian.
Yeah, the only.
He's like, "Give Santa a push," and then. Wait
Luigi's like, Yoshi was like, Santa better.
Santa needs to go on a diet.
Yeah.
Like, just give me a push. It's like,
what a dumb fucking joke.
Oh my god.
But then there's a musical section. There's a whole musical song, and I wrote down the name of the song. I literally, my note was, what the fuck is his song selection? And the lyrics are "Rockin' with the Sleigh Bells," and it's a montage of this made up Christmas song called "Rockin' with the Sleigh Bells." At least it's made up to me. I've never heard it before. And they're like jumping through, and Mario's hitting blocks, which, as we found out earlier, is people, but hitting blocks and like just
running from football players and stuff that makes sense in Dino World.
Well, some stuff that makes sense to the game. Those are all the enemies that he was dodging and jumping over were enemies from the game. So that was kind of cool. Even like the little like Mecha Koopas, which are which were the first things you see, the little like robot dinosaurs that were like, those are Mecha Koopas that you see at the end of the Mario World. That's actually how you defeat Bowser. He throws Mecha Koopas at you. You have to stomp them and then throw them up in the air to hit him on the head. But anyway, so they end up finding, they go through this montage, they find Uktar, they rescue him, and then they come back and, Mario's still dressed as Santa, so Uktar's stupid and thinks he is actually Santa, even though he speaks like Mario and he still looks like Mario. Whatever.
Looks exact same.
He looks exactly the same, just with a fake beard. And Mario delivers all the presents, and then Uktar sees that Mario didn't get one, so he gives him a present, and then it just abruptly ends. That's how as abruptly as I finish explaining this episode is how abruptly this episode ends.
Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. It's like, what the hell just happened?
I was also kind of rushing because we're already going on 40 minutes on talking about a 12-minute cartoon.
So I would like to real quick, just while you were talking, just to end off this, I looked up Rockin' in the Sleigh Bells because I was like, It
Is
is
this
just
a
a
real
made up
song?
song.
Yeah.
So I would like to share with the wonderful listeners of the Still Loading podcast here
Yes.
some lyrics from Rocking
Oh, by
with
all
the
means.
Sleigh Bells. Rocking with the sleigh bells the whole night through. Nothing could be nicer than being with you.
That's nice. Is that all the lyrics?
Oh, no, there's more, but that's all I care to say. Actually, no, hang on. Let me do the rest. Rocking with the sleigh bells all night and day. Go look out the window. It's Santa's sleigh. Jingle bells are ringing. We're feeling okay. Been rocking with the sleigh bells. Happy holidays. Yeah.
What a weird fucking song, man. What a
What?
weird song.
Yeah. One thing I do have to say, just kind of wrap this up with a bow here. Like, I did really enjoy most of the music from this episode because it's so true to Mario, right? And
Yeah.
the little sound effects when they're jumping around, it's all true to the game. Like that part is really cool, I did really enjoy that about it.
Yeah, man. I think they do. It's weird. There's a lot of things in these cartoons. And if you join Dexter and I for a Captain N episode, which you should, by the way.
Oh, we'll do it 100%, especially if we're talking about Mega Man.
Oh, wait till you see Kid Icarus. Oh my God. I'll show you a clip of him. I'll show you know what? After we're done recording, I'm going to send some episodes to you, that ones that we already did, but has some funny moments in it, and I think you'll love.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, one of the things though that these cartoons do is that there's a lot of the music is bizarrely accurate to the games. Like, I'm not saying
almost
it's perfect.
weirdly accurate.
Yeah,
Like,
considering the rest of the source material is thrown out the fucking window, but the music's really good. It's very strange. I don't quite get it.
Yeah, it's like they're in the music department. It's like, all right, guys, now we didn't put a lot of effort into much with this show, so don't go crazy with the music. And they just played it, and they're like, we did all this work.
Yeah,
like, I guess we'll use it.
That's like that TikTok that's been going around with the Goldeneye pause music.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's where I got that bit from.
No lie, the day after it came out, so within the last 3 days, 3 people have sent it to me. Or sorry, the last 2 days. Over the course of a day and a half, 3 different people sent me that TikTok. I don't even fucking have TikTok.
I did mark out the other day when you put up the "World Is Not Enough" cartridge.
Oh,
That's my shit. That was my game more than Goldeneye. So yeah.
Dude, same. I know it's controversial. Everyone loves Goldeneye, but I played The World's Not Enough first. And honestly, going back to playing Goldeneye, there's pros and cons between the two. Like, Goldeneye has the proximity mines, which are fucking awesome and hysterical to like troll people with.
Oh, for sure.
But then like The World Is Not Enough has like laser targeted rockets that you can guide.
I think The World Is Not Enough, if we're comparing which game mechanically holds up better and is still somewhat playable, I think that The World Is Not Enough on multiplayer is a little more fluid. But
I think both actually with multiplayer and single player, believe it or not, because single player in Goldeneye is it's still great. I was actually replaying it the other night, and it's still fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very linear, or it's not varied, I should say. It's just pretty much just run and gun through the whole level. With The World Is Not Enough, there's stealth missions in it, and there's actually vehicle missions and stuff like that. There's a mission where you are riding a snowmobile.
Yeah, I was just about to
down
say
the
that.
Mountain
Yeah.
So there's some variety to the missions, but it all still feels cohesive to the game. Versus Goldeneye is very narrowly focused, and that's no shade against Goldeneye because it set the stage. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't have The World Was Not Enough if you didn't have Goldeneye.
Oh, for sure.
Type of thing. So anyway, that's a digression. The entire month of December here on Still Loading has been sponsored by Geek Guild. Geek Guild is your go-to online store for all of your geeky needs. Whether it's home decor, costumes, vinyl records, and of course video games, Geek Guild has it all. They also offer a unique selection of N64 ROM hacks, games like Dragon Ball Kart, GoldenEye but with Mario characters, and also a really interesting one called Waluigi's Taco Stand. So go to geekguild.com and check out everything they have to offer. So we've covered the Christmas half of this episode. So everyone, Merry Christmas. This is the day after Christmas that this is being released, at least on my feed. I don't know when you're planning on releasing it on yours. But on my feed, it's the day after Christmas. So if you do celebrate, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa.
Well, Hanukkah's been way over at this point.
Hanukkah's been way over, I guess. Whatever seasons Happiness, greetings,
Technically,
and
the day this is released is Boxing Day, which is not celebrated in the US, but it's celebrated in other countries. I
like
think it's celebrated
mine.
in Canada.
Yes, sir.
So
Happy day of still loading retrospect with the Hodder Show.
I know, right?
Let's be serious. That's the real.
So we're going to transition into our end of the year retrospective that we always do, and uh we were talking off mic how like it seems like every time we do one of these, you just happen to get so disillusioned with podcasting like the week before we record. But you still keep on grinding, man. You've been at it for almost as I think I started mine like maybe a year before yours, but you've done
Yeah.
more episodes than I have.
Yeah. I'll be on. So as we are dropping this, I'll be a couple months away from 6 years of doing the
Yeah.
podcasting. And with the whole disillusion thing, it's like I tend to have like a really bad week before we do these for some reason. This is like the third year in a row it's happened. I just have like I have like a couple really shitty exchanges, and I'm like, seriously? But overall, like it's been a really interesting year, and it's been a year of a lot of big things that happened for me, So like there's a lot of really fun things to talk about, and some great episodes and some stuff that I always wanted to do that I did, and the biggest project I've ever taken on I did this year too. So like there's a lot of stuff to talk about for sure for me, and I know for you, you're in the same boat. There's a lot of cool things you did this year, man.
It was a lot of fun stuff, yeah, and it's it's so I try to skirt the line with this with these types of episodes, so we're not just tooting our own horns so much and being super like I don't know, like you can be a little to not come off as arrogant. I think we even talked about this last year too
We
about
did.
like wanting to be you want to be able to appreciate your accomplishments throughout the year, but also not come off as like a holier than thou or like some type of
Yeah.
arrogant fucking prick
You can be
type of
proud
thing.
of what you did, especially
Exactly,
when you're
without
doing
being
an
arrogant.
end of the year retrospective. Like it's kind of hard to not kind of toot your own horn a little
I
bit,
mean, technically, I don't even have to do these retrospectives, but I kind of like to.
Mhm.
I kind of find it fun as almost like a wrap up for the year, just to kind
Yeah,
of
same here.
like it's fun for, and plus we don't get to podcast together often because our shows are pretty different in terms of
Yeah. Oh,
in
for
terms of
sure.
content.
Yeah.
Like you focus a lot more on music and wrestling at time and wrestling and like a lot your specific interests, and mine is like I have a lot of interests outside of gaming, but I focus solely on
You are a
gaming in
gaming
this.
podcast.
It's
Yeah.
I'm a gaming podcast, so it's hard for us to find topics to really podcast together on unless I'm coming on for your show to bullshit because you have a little bit more leeway with that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I love doing these not just because it's fun to look back and seeing like I thought like I was telling you I think it'd be fun to like talk about what our most downloaded episodes are this year
Yeah,
from
and
this year
comparing them
was
to what our favorite episode was.
and compared to
Yeah.
what our favorite episode is. We're going to get into all that. But I guess before we get into that, what would you say is one of your biggest accomplishments for the podcast this year? I know mine.
It's pretty easy for me because looking at this year 2021 with the show, I hit two huge milestones.
Mm-hmm.
I hit my 5-year podcast anniversary, which I did the 5th year anniversary special for the Hodder Show, which was I think it was 4 hours long or
Jesus
3.5 hours long of content with multiple different people doing all these different types of interviews and basically just talking about the history of the show and these people that are super important to the show and why they're important. And basically it was kind of like, it was a huge accomplishment. And I basically did that episode as almost like a love letter to to the show from me, because it was like, okay, I want to look back on this one day and go, hey, here are the people that in one way or another were super important to this show, and acknowledging that and going, without these people, there's, the show wouldn't be what it is, or just they were important, or they were, such a great guest, or they're a great
Yeah.
friend of mine, so that was definitely a huge accomplishment. Then also I hit my 300th episode, which I mean, that's pretty big accomplishment too.
I hit my 200th.
Yeah, which is huge too, right? And you had such a kick-ass 200th episode, man. Like,
that was fun.
So
That was
fun.
so much fun to do. for me, it was the two biggest accomplishments were the 200th episode, and then just being able to get back to weekly content after
Yeah.
having a kid. Because for people, for longtime listeners of the show, I would generally release every other week because it was
Hmm.
so hard for me to figure out topics in advance. Like one of the reasons I stopped doing, like when I started the podcast uh like 7.5 years ago, and the first, basically I would do like 10 episodes and then just stop because I was tired of coming, like I would get frustrated that I would always come up with ideas last minute, and it was getting
Hmm.
aggravating to have to come up with ideas and try to get my buddy Justin to get over here, and it was just hard. And no, that's no shade against Justin, his schedule is busy, and it's like, unless you are making this a priority, and I understand, like, you're doing this for fun and for like you're spending your time with it, so if,
Absolutely.
like, I get it. So there's that. But then so I would do that for a couple months, take like a 9-10 month hiatus, and then do another batch of like 10 episodes, and then take another 9 to 10 month hiatus. And it wasn't until I figured, like, maybe I just shouldn't do it weekly. Maybe I should go every other week. So then for like 3 years, I went every other week.
Hmm.
From I started in 2014. I want to say 2017 is when I started doing every other week, and stayed consistent from 2017 up through last year, which
Hmm.
was the summer of PS2. And I did that full series weekly of PS2 games. And because of being able to prep for that, I was able to figure out how to keep weekly content going. But of course, once I finally got that started, my wife and I got pregnant. And so, or my wife got pregnant. So I had to figure out, like, okay, I don't know if I can keep up with like a weekly content schedule on top of being a first time dad.
Hmm.
Like, that's just so much work. And I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I scaled it back to every other week starting in January, because that's when the kid was due, and I went January, February, and March as every other week. But then starting in April, I figured out, like, okay, let me try to do these mini episodes. Like every other week will be a mini episode instead of a full one. And that's what started the episodes with Dexter, with the
Hmm.
Captain N episodes, which really aren't that many. They're about 50 minutes to an hour each. But so they're quote unquote mini, but they're, I don't know. And then I did,
You don't have to put quite as much prep into it, maybe.
no,
I
because
think.
it's, I
Yeah.
don't, the only prep I have to do, and Dexter and I, we record 2 episodes at once. So we knock out 2 months worth of work in an afternoon. And then I just have to edit it when I have
Hmm.
time. So that was the one helpful thing. And then figuring out the other thing was that History of RTS series that I did this year. And that actually is I'm pretty proud of too, just because there was a lot of research to do. Like I spent a lot of time researching different games and having to write all the scripts for that and keep the
Hmm.
scripts flowing so it sounded like I was speaking off the cuff and somewhat naturally, which I was not, but I tried to make it sound
I
more
think you did a
natural.
great job with it.
Oh, thank you. So first time dad, trying to reestablish a weekly content schedule, and then doing the 200th episode. And then after the 200th, I actually started the Patreon, and so far I've already done 3 bonus episodes for that. So, like, I'm making more content than I ever was. And I think this year was just proved to me how much I'm actually able to get done and
Hmm.
still have free time for myself, and still keep my sanity in some way, shape, or form. So I'm very grateful for this year, and not only because got to I got to meet a bunch of new people, which we'll get into later, but like, becoming a dad's been this has been the toughest year of my life. I love my kid to pieces, and I miss her every day I go to work, just about. Just about. But like, it is having a newborn is no fucking joke. Like, it's insane how little you know about being a human until you have a little one. Like, it's wild. The fact that, like, the one of the biggest realizations to me was my kid would get overtired, right? And then she would be so tired that she couldn't calm herself down to fall asleep. So she would just stay fussing.
Hmm.
And it makes no sense to me as an adult how you can be so tired that you can't fall asleep. But that's what happened to her.
See, I totally get that.
I don't.
I'm that way. Like I'll be so tired that I just can't fall asleep. And I'm
That
like,
makes
what
no
is wrong
sense
with
to
me?
me.
Yeah.
It makes no but that's what happened. And
Mhm.
it's crazy what my anxiety has been the worst it's ever been this year. I've had such bad anxiety. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that. Just I
Sure.
have no problem saying that I have that issue. But with all that, this podcast and you listeners out there who are listening to this have been the biggest source of relief for this anxiety for me because it gives me this creative outlet to push through. And I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know what my kid's schedule is going to be because that's the whole reason I'm able to do this because my kid goes to bed early. So I spend 5 hours every night. I have 5 hours to myself almost every night because I usually stay up till midnight or 12:30
Mhm.
and sacrifice a little bit of sleep for the next day so I can either do podcasting, stream on Twitch, or just watch a TV show with my wife. I try to do that at least once or twice a week just to like spend time with my wife so that way
For
it's
sure.
not just all this, right?
That's important.
Yeah, and it really means a lot because this has been the biggest year for my show, not just in terms of content, but in terms of listenership. It took a while, but the last like 2 or 3 months, my average downloads have grown, and that's all
Nice.
thanks to you listeners. So it just this podcast this year, and I talk about it a little bit on the 200th episode, just as like a thank you. But this podcast has meant the fucking world to me this year because the amount of anxiety from being a new dad is been awful for me. I'm not saying every dad's like that. It's just my personal experience.
Mhm.
And this has been such a blessing for me to be able to like a couple times a week talk to some cool people, talk to some friends and just bullshit about video games for an hour or two. It's been such a wonderful thing for me.
Well, for sure. And like that's the thing too, right? Like as creative people, like you need that outlet. And I know for myself too, like regard if I have a really particularly long day or whatever or something stressing me out or whatever, I need that outlet.
Mhm.
And when I don't have it, like I had a week off literally like 2 weeks ago because I was like I physically cannot sit at this computer and record a podcast. Like my voice is shot. Like I'm just like I can't do it. I don't have the mental focus to do it today. And I hate doing that because then a couple days later, I'm like, man, I can't believe I missed an episode. Like, damn it. Like, and then it's like I do miss doing it so much because then I don't have that outlet, right?
Well, and it's like I was saying at the beginning of the episode, how like I don't get to talk to you all that often. I
Mhm.
don't get to collaborate with you on podcasts all that often. So it's like the podcasts I've found to be like it turns for better or worse, sometimes worse. It has turned being able to schedule appointments with friends into
Yeah.
like you're feeling productive. You're not just spending time with friends, you're also making content. And that's awesome, but it also is a slippery slope to an extent because it's like if you're having a conversation with friends and you almost feel like you have to save stuff for like if they're on a show or something like that.
Yeah, and that
Now,
can be a slippery slope for sure.
I'm grateful that I'm a solo host because if I had a permanent co-host and had like a really good conversation outside of it, I'm like, oh man, I wish we could have recorded that. I don't have to deal with that. So
Mhm.
that's I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, man, it's just this year has been probably the toughest in my life just because of lots of other stuff that I won't go into on the podcast. But
Mhm.
the last 2 years between the pandemic, like I don't mind saying this, my grandparents passed away last year. I
Mhm.
think I even mentioned that on our retrospective last year. So between my grandparents passing away last year, the pandemic continuing on from last year, this year, and then also trying to figure out how the fuck to raise a kid in a pandemic on top of um obviously just new time parent jitters, like it's been a tough couple of years, and this is not a woe is me. I think I'm generally still pretty happy. I'm very happy with everything that's going on. It's just it's been tough, and this podcast has been there for me and you listeners. Like I know I keep calling you out specifically, but seriously, like even though I don't hear a lot of feedback directly, the download numbers, just seeing people download this means more to me than you could know, just because it validates that I'm not just screaming into the void, you
Mhm.
know?
There's nothing quite like when you put up content and there's people that are actually listening and checking it out. It is such a wonderful feeling, regardless of how many people it is. Like, it's a really wonderful feeling. It
It
really
really
is.
is. So I think in terms of our content, let's use that as a transition into talking about what are some of our favorite episodes were this year. Some of our own favorite content was. Admittedly, dude, I don't get a chance to listen to your show a lot, so I apologize. You seem to listen to almost every one of mine, and now I'm such a bad friend. I don't listen to nearly enough of your stuff. I did listen to your first like audio drama horror story stuff. That was really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. That was, and I mean, I get behind on your stuff and I try and,
It's
catch up,
so
and
hard, dude, and I,
yeah.
I don't have an excuse though, bro. I don't know why I never use the word bro. I don't know why I used it there. I don't have an excuse though, man. I literally listen to. I'm going to talk about it later because on my podcasting app on my phone, it
hmm
keeps track of all of the. It keeps track of all my podcast listening data. I literally listen to podcasts all day long at work, like
hmm
minimum of 4 to 7 hours a day. So it makes it seem like I have no life when when you look at my playback statistics, but it's all while I'm at work.
hmm
So anyway, we'll get into I'll get into those playback statistics later in the episode. But TJ, what are some of your favorite episodes from this past year?
So for for me, obviously it goes without saying, I have to shout out again the 50th anniversary special. Um, that was the biggest project I've ever taken on. Even when I was editing, 4 podcasts a week and doing a bunch of other different stuff, I put days and days into that episode.
I
And
believe it.
having you involved with it, having all the people involved with that were, it was so much fun to reconnect with people. I listened to it back just like a month ago,
Hmm.
just to kind of listen through it, the whole thing from start to finish. And like, I'm really proud of that because I think it came together quite well. If I have one regret from it, it's that I focused a lot on the video side of things and not so much on the audio quality. And that's something that going forward, I've just decided I'd rather have just an audio podcast again and focus on having great audio. But, you know, looking back at that, it's such a special episode because, like, man, like I've been doing this for 5 years. Like, that's a big deal, and it's something I'm super proud of. And that's something that I'm always going to have to look back on as kind of like, you can see during that episode there's more than a few times where like on my face you can see like how much fun I'm having and
Yeah.
getting to reconnect with people like my boy Anthony, who I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, getting my boys Fork Found movie reviews to literally get back together one time only to come on the show. Like, I didn't think that was going to happen. And that was such a special moment for me because those guys had such a profound impact on me. And like, it was just like, looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I did it because of just how many hours I put into it.
Trying to
But then
schedule
it's like,
everything, like
yeah,
schedule all the
dude, it
people.
was,
I know that struggle.
yeah. And there's a lot of people that I just couldn't make work too. There was supposed to be another 10 people on that episode.
Oh
And I'm
wow.
like, man, if I ended up pulling that off, it would
That
have
would have been
been like
fun.
5 hours long.
So many people.
And it's like, holy shit. But that's definitely a special one. And it's always going to be, obviously, episode 300. I mean, come on. That was one of my
It's a big
most,
milestone. It's a big fucking
yeah,
milestone.
it's one of my most downloaded episodes ever. One of my favorite local businesses, I had them on. Um, and it was great. And it was also my first in-person interview I had done since the pandemic started. So
Oh,
that
that's
was a
got dude.
really,
It's been so
yeah.
long since I've been able to. Actually, you know what? For my 200th, I had my buddy Justin in person because we're both
Right. Yeah.
vaccinated, so we could both be in person.
Mhm.
In fact, I'll tell a funny story about the recording of the 200th episode later. But that's great, man. That's I don't know it. I love hearing that, and I just looked at like the runtime again for your 5 year anniversary. 3.5 hours
Three
of
and a half.
content.
I thought it was 3.5. And
That's fucking
yeah.
wild.
And the thing is, there's a probably about an hour of stuff that got cut. Like I cut a solid, there was Brandon, Ryan, you, Chris, Anthony, and Joe. all of our segments I cut half an hour off of, give or
Wow.
take. I think yours, I only did about 10, 15 minutes or something
That's
like
right,
that.
because I'm more
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, because you're a pro. But
No.
and it was hard to do that because I was like, this is all good stuff and it's important. But
I
I
would have
was
just
like,
kept it on.
yeah,
4 hours, who gives a fuck?
well, it would have been
5-6 hours,
over
I don't know.
5, 6. I think when I put it all together, and mind you, this is on my old laptop too.
Oh, yeah,
So
no wonder that you
for
had to
me
limit
to
it.
for me to edit a 3.5 hour video or a 6 hour video, I would have been it took me basically 2 hours just to move parts around. And
Jesus
that was, I mean,
Christ.
thank God for this great, which is a huge thing this year, obviously getting a new laptop, but that was something really special, and obviously it goes without saying, I have to talk about, I had a lot of killer interviews this year. I reached out to some people and I had on my first author very recently, which was awesome.
I said I don't listen to
Mm.
episodes often. I listened to that one. I
Yeah, you
loved
messaged
it.
me about that one.
I loved that episode with the horror
Mhm. Yeah,
author.
Mark Taus, who is just incredible, and he was such a great guest. Like, he's one of my favorite interviews I think I've ever done, man. And it was so much fun. That's definitely a standout. There's starting off the year. I started off the year with my boy Neil from Deadlight, and that's like we'll talk about a little bit later about download numbers and shit. But
Yeah, yeah.
that was a big one for that, and obviously it goes without saying. One big thing that happened with me this year was I randomly started writing horror on Reddit for No Sleep
Yes,
and stuff like that.
I forgot about that. That's been a big thing
Yeah.
for you recently.
And in doing that, I decided to, instead of me reading other people's Halloween content for my show for Halloween, which I've always done every year, I've done some kind of scary content. I was like, well, shit, why don't I read my own stuff? So I did 6 stories in total that were all my own creations, and I did 3 episodes, all narrated by me with full sound effects and music and stuff like that. And obviously that was super special. It was so much fun. I had so many kind words about that. And, as someone who loves the art of voice acting and wants to slowly dip my feet into that world a little bit, that was almost like my first step to really try, because I tried to do different voices and voices that I thought sounded tacky and really silly, but I was like, let me expand my voice a bit here and see what I can do. And I've had some really kind words and some great feedback, some great constructive criticism about it. And it's like, that's fantastic. But
That's the best you can
yeah,
ask for, man. Like constructive
absolutely.
criticism and positive feedback. Because I'd rather be told like, okay, you could do this and this a little bit better, but it's
Mhm.
obviously you don't want the shitty criticism, but like
Yeah.
constructive
Oh, you
criticism,
suck. Well, what
just
sucks
being
about
like,
it?
just
Yeah.
literally telling you like, yeah, you could do this and this better. That's super beneficial. I'll shout this.
Mhm.
I've shouted this out a bunch of times, but I got one of my earliest reviews was a 4-star review where the guy said I was too hard on myself, and um not being rude, just being like, sometimes just saying flat out, yeah, he's too hard on himself sometimes, and that's the only reason I didn't make this a 5. I was like, you know what, fair enough. It's a very, it's
Mhm.
a it I've always been a little too self-deprecating because I don't know,
Same
it's
here.
maybe it's a defense mechanism, but who knows. And
Mhm.
honestly, part of that is part of the way to combat that is kind of this end of the year retrospective where
Mhm.
it's like we get to talk about some of our favorite moments about it, not like how great everything is, like
Yeah.
just some of our favorite moments from the past year of podcasting.
Yeah. And it's funny because one thing, harkening back to our retrospective last year, one thing I said during it was I wanted to do one thing in the year that scared me, whether it was reaching out to someone that I thought was going to say no, or almost even worse would say yes. And then it'd be like, oh my God, I have to interview this person now. And I did do that. I set a goal for myself. I wanted to reach out to 5 people that I didn't think would say yes. That was kind of like my goal. And, unfortunately, they didn't say yes, or I didn't get a response or whatever. Stuff like that happens, right? But
Hmm.
as far as something to scare myself, and I'm going to end off my portion of this with this, for about 3 years now, I have really wanted to do a narration of a specific story that I love and I have loved since I was a kid. And I always wanted to do it, but I never had the confidence or just the balls to do it. Because I was like, I am going to get shredded if I don't do at least an okay job on this.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which some people may be familiar from The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror.
Or just the poem itself that
or
you
just
learn
the
at
poem,
school.
of course, yeah.
One
But
of the
like,
most famous poems of all time.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how many people don't think it's like a skit from The Simpsons. You'd be amazed how many people think that.
Well,
You did the Simpsons poem. It's like, what? Like, no, man, it's fucking.
No. So they do know it's a skit from The Simpsons, but they don't know that it's actually based off of a real thing.
It's a real poem.
Okay,
like they
that's
know,
what I was confused about.
You're like they know it's real, but they have never experienced it otherwise. And I'm like, how have you not experienced? It's like one of the most famous things of all time. Like, come on, quote the
seriously.
Raven. Never, like, seriously.
Nevermore.
Yeah. So like, hearkening back to that, like, I think that was something I always wanted to try and do. And I was like, so many legendary people have done this story. Obviously James Earl Jones' version on The Simpsons was fantastic. And he has a full version of it of him doing it, which is incredible. Why am I drawing a blank on his name now? Oh my gosh. He plays Count Dooku on Star Wars.
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee, who is like, his version of the Raven is mind-blowing. And
he also does heavy metal music, or did.
Oh, he sure did. And it is
it's good. Okay, good to know.
Oh, it's very good. It's very good. Operatic, very heavy.
Yeah. That would make sense for his style. Like, I can't imagine him doing like screaming.
No, it's him
imagine
singing,
that old dude like
No, it's very, but it's like almost like heavier.
Yeah,
because it's Sir Christopher Lee, and he has a claymore, and it's like Charlemagne. It's like, whoa.
Have you ever heard the story? So he was in a James Bond movie. He was in The Man with the Golden Gun. He was Scaramanga, and famously, I don't know if it was in that movie or one other movie he was doing, but the sound guys on the movie were trying to determine the sound of what it would sound like of someone getting stabbed in the back.
So that was Lord of the Rings.
Was it Lord of the Rings? Yeah. And he's like, no, that's not. This is how it would sound. Because he was actually in like the SAS and shit, and he was like,
he actually killed people.
He actually killed people. Dude was a fucking badass. It was wild,
real motherfucker. But yeah, so, and there was what gave me the inspiration to do it was there is a fantastic podcast it's my favorite podcast, and I'd be remiss if I didn't shout it out, and that's called The Grey Rooms. And it's a horror anthology podcast, and it's amazing. And the creator and one of the voice actors and the producer of that podcast, his name's Jason Gray. He did a version of The Raven, and it's my favorite version of it. And I listened to it and I went, man, like, this is just, it's incredible. He did it a couple of years ago, and I hadn't seen anyone do it recently. And I was like, I want to do this as a tribute. It's not, hey, look how great I am. It's something that I wanted to do to challenge myself, because I was so scared to do it, because I was like, man, this is not some Reddit story I wrote. This is
classic literature.
This is a classic literature. If I do this and butcher it, people are going to light me up. And I knew in particular there was a couple of people who they would have told me, hey, dude, you butchered this. You should take it down. Like, and I was ready for that, because I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to read it how I hear it in my head, and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to challenge myself with this. And I did about probably, I think 23 takes of it, something along those lines. And I spent hours editing it and spacing it differently. And obviously listening back to it, I'm like, oh, I do 100 things differently, right? That's how it always goes.
Yeah, that's how it always is going to be.
But when it was all said and done, I'm really proud of it. And there's a couple people in particular that I thought were going to say, like, dude, like, this was really ballsy. I don't know if I would have done this. but they actually had some really kind things to say, and they were like, I expected this to not be as good as it was, and I was like, I mean, like, I'll
I
take it.
I think working in a weird sense in that specific situation, not all
Mhm.
situations in the creative field, but working out of a place of fear almost can help propel it, because you become a perfectionist in those
Mhm.
moments where you're like, I need to make sure that I'm doing this the right way to pull this
Yeah.
off in the way that not only I think just like is justifies the work, or it pays adequate tribute to the work that you're
Yes.
doing, but it
That's it.
also, yeah, it not only are you doing that, but you're also trying to make sure that it's interesting for the audience and all that good stuff,
Mhm.
and putting your own spin on it as best you can. So yeah, I get that. I don't even remember what I said at the end of my goal at the end of did you listen to that episode
I
recently?
didn't. I just happen to remember that was something I
I
said.
don't know what I said.
Oh, no.
I don't remember what my goal was last year.
But
Um
you had a pretty hefty year too, and I mean, obviously, like, you've talked about a few things, but, like, for you, what was some of your favorite moments from the year and some favorite episodes from the year?
so one of the probably my favorite episode from the year is with, I've shouted it out before, but my episode with Dearest Abby on Donkey Kong Classics. So I did it for longtime listeners of the show. I actually talked about this on the Land Parties podcast that I guested on a couple weeks ago, and they were asking me what one of my favorite episodes was, and I mentioned this one as well because for longtime listeners of the show, I did this thing called the 40 for 40 series where I did
Yes.
40 complete in the box NES games. I would say if I'm lucky, half of those episodes are good. I think it's less than half, almost certainly. Um,
I would disagree with that, but go on.
I am very not proud of a lot of that stuff, and I'm not even saying that to be down on myself, but I did Donkey Kong Classics for it,
Mhm.
and I spent this. This is one of the reasons I needed to redo it, and I'm going to be redoing some of those games in the future. I don't know when, but I do want to redo some of those episodes. Donkey Kong Classics, when I covered for the 40 for 40 series back in like 2017 or something like that, it was a total runtime of 23 minutes. Not only did I cover Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. in those 23 minutes, but I also covered Double Dragon. All three of those games, even if you take out Donkey Kong Jr., those two games, Donkey Kong and Double Dragon, are two of the most fucking important games of all time. And I spent 20 minutes total between the two of them and add in a third game as well. Donkey Kong, it cannot be understated how important that game is for the video game industry. And I go into
Mhm.
details like that in the Donkey Kong episode with Dearest Abby. But doing that episode with Dearest Abby felt like such a cathartic thing for me because I got to fix something that I thought was bad. And not only do I think that I fixed it, I think I made it significantly better. And I shouldn't say I did it. Abby was a fantastic guest because she's a competitive Donkey Kong player and she goes into the details of what these competitive players do to get high scores and strategies that I would have never thought of. And like talking about how competitive players, like professional competitive players, can manipulate how the barrels fall down the girders so that way they can layer them over top of each other. And when
Mhm.
you jump over one, it's actually three just stacked on top of each other. And so they get like quintuple the points or some shit like that. Like stuff like that. I think that was my favorite episode from this year. But other highlights, the 200th episode,
Of
obviously,
course. Yeah.
that was super fun. I also did, if we're going with the idea of like challenging ourselves this year, I did try a bunch of new stuff. The 200th episode was a fully improv episode, and not just like I technically all of my episodes are most of my episodes are improv. It's casual conversation, but that was like my attempt at improv comedy. I don't know if I pulled it off. I think it turned out pretty well, but obviously it's actually one of my most downloaded episodes this year, which we will also get into. Uh, so it's just I was actually very happy with how that turned out, even though I wasn't quite sure if I could pull it off because I've never done anything like that with improv.
Mhm.
Like I'm not an actor, I'm not an improviser, so I wasn't sure if I could pull something off like that. The other thing I tried was I did a text adventure as an episode where I would bring people on and we would play through a text adventure video game. I would read off the prompt on the mic and then my guests would respond and we would come up with jokes and stuff as we would proceed through the adventure.
Which
Did
those were
that.
really fun. I really enjoyed those.
I did
Yeah.
too. I think the second one I didn't do quite as good at. My guests were fantastic. That was with British Bond Addict and James Burb over on Instagram. And they were fantastic. I think I was a little bit more jumbled with it, but still, I was really happy with how those episodes turned out because that was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So I would say my favorite ones were one other highlight. Gabe swore he was probably the highlight of my year in terms of interviews. He's an animator. He is the executive producer for the Animaniacs show on Hulu.
Yes, right. I'm okay. I remember that now.
That blew me away that I could get him on and that he's like, I don't have his number or anything, but like we still message each other back and forth every now and then. And like he came on again to do a Tiny Toons adventure episode where we do Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure for the Sega Genesis. And to kind of branch this into our most downloaded episodes, his episodes were my top 2.
I'm not surprised.
The first episode with him was my number 1 most popular episode from this year. His the part 2 with him is not in the top 10, surprisingly enough. I thought that was kind of weird, but part 1 is super high, and then his Tiny Toon Adventures ones is literally only, even though it came out over 3 months later, it's actually only 7 downloads below his.
Oh wow. So,
yeah, it's crazy. So those were my 2 most popular episodes, and Gabe is an awesome dude. I'm gonna have him on again at some point. I don't know for what. I want to have him on for Captain N because he's an animator. He has so much experience in animation.
He could bring something else to the table.
Oh my god, so much knowledge and so much. So instead of just us ripping on a cartoon, he will have so much insight into what goes into making these cartoons and shit like that. Like I don't know if he'd be willing to do that. And Gabe, if you're listening to this, I hope you'd be willing to do it because I would love to have you on for that. So I'm going to reach out to him at some point. But him and I were planning on doing, it's an informal series. I do so many fucking series on the show, but it's an informal series where we're going to do episodes on video games based off of cartoons. Since he's an animator, I thought that's a cool thing to do. So we started with Tiny Toons, and he's going to pick the next one. I picked Tiny Toon at Buster's Hidden Treasure, and he's going to pick the next one whenever we end up doing that. I should reach out to him. We should do that for maybe January, February. Anyway, so yeah. Before I go into through my top 10 of most of my downloaded episodes this year, what about yours? What are some of your top ones?
So for me, it's funny. There is an episode I have, and I have to say it was I'm going to talk about my actually the ones I released this year that were my top downloaded, but every year consistently for the past 5 years, going on 6 now, my top downloaded episode every year has been episode 19 of the show. Consistently, without fail, nothing comes close to it.
Why?
I did an episode on Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, and it was just a tribute episode. It's 20 minutes long. Yes, I talk about my love for Alice in Chains and how much Lane means to me and blah, 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 blah. But just for whatever freaking reason, it's like this albatross on my back that just won't leave me alone, because no matter what I do, I re-released the episode and did alternative commentary thinking maybe, and nope, just consistently that episode. It's always my most downloaded no matter what I do. I can't get away from it.
That's
so
really funny.
I always have to shout that episode out because it's like a bad joke. Me and my old producer still talk about it. He's like, "How's that episode doing?" And I'm like, "Better than anything else I release." It's just, it's a bad joke.
It's one of those things where it's and we'll get into it with mine. My most downloaded episode of all time is from 2017. And it actually is in the top 10 for downloaded episodes this year.
Of course it is.
And I'm just surprised. But what's interesting is all the other episodes are from this year. So I think
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of all time downloads, let me see. Actually, I have it sorted right now. There's no episode from this year in the top 10 of all time downloads for the show, but that's that doesn't bother me because it there's tons of stuff that
They're
comes
also
out.
up longer, right? So they have
They're
more time.
yeah. In fact, Gabe swore the one that I mentioned is like the highest downloaded one for this year. That is tied for like it's in the low 20s, like 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good considering it came out just like not even 10 months ago, at least in my opinion. But yeah, that's funny though. So your most downloaded episode is episode 19, and it's
And has
consistently
consistently this week. Let me see this week here.
That's
Today.
really fucking funny.
Let me see. Last 7 days, it is my top downloaded episode. So
That's really funny. I'll have to see.
Dude, it's like a bad joke that it just won't leave me alone. But as far as this year, it's hard for me because I do the video thing on YouTube as well with a lot of my stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do too, but I don't have the nice video component. It's just audio with a thumbnail.
Yeah, I do the same thing with a lot of stuff, but so one of my most viewed and technically downloaded episodes of the year was my chat with my boy Neil from Deadlight. Like that video did leaps and bounds more. Well, I shouldn't say leaps and bounds, but it did quite a bit better than anything else. But then download wise, my episode 300 was my most downloaded episode. But then there's the 5th year anniversary episode, which did really well. My chat with Mark Taus did really well. My Halloween stuff did quite well. Like it's funny to look at stuff that, I knew that I shouldn't say I knew. I figured the 5th year anniversary would do well. And I knew that Neil and Deadlight, like I know he has a lot of fans, and so I was like, oh, this is going to be a good episode. But I was like, and he was shocked too, because I told him like, dude, like you're my most down, because at that point, like I had more downloads and views on his episode than I did on pretty much anything else for the last like few months. And he was like, really?
Like podcast providers, which fucked all your numbers.
I mean, I'm not even going to get into that, but yeah, I mean, I lost a lot. I to be brutally honest, I still haven't recovered from that, if I'm being brutally honest. Which that
word
was
to the wise for prospective podcasters out there: do not use SoundCloud.
If you're going to start a podcast, talk to me first, because I have a lot of really good things to tell you not to do.
Don't go to SoundCloud. Dude, I made that mistake too. Some of my oldest episodes.
Yeah.
So if you look at my podcast feed, it only goes down to episode 7 because the first 6 are over on SoundCloud. We've talked about this before, yes. I think. And at some point I will re-release those episodes. I'm not waiting for anything specific. I just don't feel like finding the audio for it again.
Yeah.
So who knows? For me, right, looking at my top 10, my number 10 out of everything, and considering it only came out not even 2 months ago, I'm pretty happy with that. The 200th episode.
Nice.
Everything else is from June or earlier, but the 200th episode is number 10, followed by the first episode of this past year of 2021. It was Hockey Games with Pat Hickey Jr. Then that's number 9. Number 8 is the one from 2017. That's Metal Arms Glitch in the System. I don't know why this episode gets so many downloads, because this is a relatively obscure game. Nobody fucking knows about this game. I've sung its praises for so long, and I'm just constantly amazed by the fact that this episode continues to get downloads, so much so that it is my most downloaded episode of all time. Though technically, I believe I did an episode on Final Fantasy VI around the same time, and I use Libsyn as my hosting site.
Yeah.
And for a while, it separated Spotify downloads and your RSS feed downloads. And Spotify told me I had like over 600 downloads for that episode at one point, or 600 listens. But then when they switched it over, suddenly my downloads suddenly dropped off from Spotify. So I'm very confused by that. But if we're going by current modern numbers, Metal Arms Glitch in the System is by far the most popular. I shouldn't say by far. It's actually, oh wow, actually, yeah, it's by a solid 50 some odd downloads, which is just interesting. But anyway, then we got at number 7, Super Mario Sunshine. At number 6, I'd have to see. I can't see the full name. It's one of the GameCube Hidden Gems episodes. I do not know which one it is. If it's like the first one, I did 2 of them, right? So I don't know if it's like the first one or the.
If I had to guess, I'd say it was the first one, just because in my experience with doing like 1 and 2 or part 1 and 2 or whatever, first
It's
ones
the first
always
one,
do
you're
better.
right.
Always do better.
Yeah, it's the first one. I just double checked. Then followed by Uncharted Lost Legacy, which was my second episode of the year. That's at number 5. Number 4, Super Mario 64. Number 3 is the Game Boy Advance. From back, that was a game because this year was the 20th anniversary of the Game Boy
Right.
Advance,
Yeah.
just like it was the 20th anniversary of Halo and the 20th anniversary of the Xbox and the 20th anniversary of the Nintendo GameCube and the 30th anniversary of the Super Nintendo.
Holy shit! I didn't realize. There was
No,
that
wait,
much
sorry.
stuff
Last
happening
year
this
was Super Nintendo's
Yeah.
30th.
year.
I think. I don't remember when the North American release date for the Super Nintendo was. Now, I believe it was 1990 in Japan and 91 in the US, but I'm not entirely certain off the top of my head. I feel bad for not knowing that as someone who really likes. Oh, I fucking called it. August 23rd, 91 is the release date for North America for the Super Nintendo. So yeah, 30th anniversary for the release of the Super Nintendo, at least in the US and Canada. So, and then obviously the top 2, Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Hidden Treasure with Gabe, and then the top 1 is Gabe's episode.
Which doesn't surprise me because that was a great episode.
I specifically put Animaniacs in the title because I knew that would get higher. This is going to sound super fucking nerdy, but SEO.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. For those who don't know, SEO is search engine optimization, basically including things in the title that you know is going to get. It's the definition of clickbait. You know, you're trying to find things that the search algorithms are going to seek out and prioritize your shit above other people's shit. And if I typed in Gabe Swore, you know, people don't know a lot of the people behind animation, with the exception of voice actors.
Yeah.
So since he's a producer, people might not know that the amount of work that Gabe does on this stuff. So I included Gabe's name as the primary thing, but then I also mentioned Animaniacs, and I'm pretty sure that's the only reason this episode continues to climb as high as it does. In fact, it doesn't have any so far in December, but it had 2 downloads last month and 10 in October, which is very surprising.
Yeah, considering how old it is.
Yeah. What about you? What are your top downloaded ones?
So I don't have like a list in front of me. That was one thing I didn't do. But like,
oh, mine just does it.
Yeah.
That's my
mine doesn't have. So
does it.
I use a great website that I highly recommend because, to be honest, they saved my podcast. And that's Anchor.
Completely
by
free,
Spotify.
It's great.
And Anchor's free. I mean, it's why I'm on it. But like when I had my Spotify thing happen, I reached out to a bunch of sites and basically said, hey, I need a thing where I can input this RSS feed, but also I need it to make sure it's all in order. I can't have any bull honky happening. So I tried to use another website and they uploaded it all in the wrong order. And I was paying for this website and I went, hey, like, we need to fix this. And they were like, oh, you have to re-upload everything. And I was like, that's not how this should work. I'm paying you.
You should just take the RSS feed and transfer it over to your ownership.
Yeah. So, and then I contacted Anchor and they were like, hell yeah, dude, we got you. And it's been wonderful. But so the analytics aren't quite the same, but like for me, like I know for sure my top downloaded episode of the year on Anchor anyway, looking at YouTube is completely different, but for Anchor, it was without a shadow of a doubt my 300th episode with a local business here. That was definitely in town here. That was definitely by a landslide my most downloaded. Close behind that is actually my chat with Mark Taus. Which
that's such a good
su-
episode.
Yeah,
dude.
not surprising.
I love that episode.
Thank you, man. I wish I could take credit for it.
When you have a guest on, like your guest generates the content more than you
Mhm.
do. You are more of a conduit for the guest. So, and that's not to, if an episode's bad, I'm not blaming the guest for the
Mhm.
episode being
Of
bad, because
course.
if you fuck up the interview, the episode's going to be bad. That's not on the guest. If you fuck up the interview, you fuck up the interview. But
Yeah.
yeah, but a lot of times, like interviews, it's not you, it's not us.
Mhm.
We're the conduit for the guest to get their information
Yes.
out there.
And that's how you to me anyway, that's when you know you've got a good head for interviewing, is you understand that.
Well, it's
You
I mean,
know.
I do interject some of my own like personal anecdotes, but that's more of in an effort to make the guest feel comfortable, and
Mhm.
because I want them to realize that I'm like trying to engage with them in a conversation, and not necessarily just being like, here, you promote your shit and I'm getting, a cool guest out of it. Like that's
I'm gonna sit
obviously a
here and
part of the
look at you.
transaction,
Yeah.
but like I want to, I've said this 1,000 times before, and I will continue to say it. Like whenever I have guests on, my goal is to build some type of a relationship with them, like some
Same
type
here.
of a
Yeah.
friendship, because, and I understand it's not going to happen all the time. In fact, there's a couple guests that I've had on that I've never spoken to again, and there's no ill will. It's just, that's the
How it
luck
goes
of it.
sometimes.
It's how it
Yeah.
goes. And so, there was never anything bad. It's just, there's certain guests that you, just like people, you click with really well and you stay in touch with them,
Mhm.
and you want to continue to do more stuff with them. Gabe Swore is one of those. Like Gabe and I really hit it off. There's an episode that at the time this came out is now two weeks ago, but the episode with Jeremy Blaustein, at the time we're recording this, it has not been
Mhm.
released yet, but at the time this comes out, it will be out. The video game translator and localizer, we really hit it off. He was a really nice guy, and I loved having him on the show. And so much so, like, he added me on Facebook, and we'll talk to each other now. It's really
Mhm.
cool. So that's one of my favorite aspects of it. But okay, we've been going on for a little bit of time now. It's like an hour and a half. So what I want to do to wrap it up, I know this, I'm not expecting you to have this. If you do, awesome. But I'm going to go through my personal podcast listening statistics for the year, like shit that I listen to.
Oh, mine's easy. I know it off the top of my head, so you
Joe
go, and then I'll
Rogan.
go. No, actually, no, not even
No,
close. He's not even my top 5, man.
really.
Yeah.
We'll go for some of yours then, since you know yours.
Number 1 is the Gray Rooms, bar
Hmm.
none. Doesn't even come close. I shouldn't say it doesn't come close, but the Gray Rooms is, I love it. Next up to that is SCP Archives, which is another horror anthology podcast I love. A close third to that is Talk is Jericho. I love Talk is Jericho.
Okay, yeah. I've heard of that one.
A fourth to that is actually a one I discovered this year and binged. I've binged twice now because I love it so much. It's actually it's a comedy podcast, but it's a really silly, like almost like supernatural comedy podcast. It's called
Okay.
Less is Morgue. It's a ghost and a ghoul talk about stuff, and it's just the silliest shit, but it's so fun. And I lose myself in it. And the voice acting and production is fantastic. And then fifth for that is Something to Wrestle with, Bruce Pritchard, because I love my wrestling.
You're
And
wrestling.
And then I
No,
mean, like, from there, obviously, like, and I'm not just saying this, like my top 10 for sure, you would be in my top 10 because I don't listen to a lot of gaming podcasts, but I always make sure I if I see an episode like your one, I'm gonna already forget his damn name, and you said his name a bunch already. The Animaniac, Gabe.
Gabe swore.
Yeah,
Gabe
Gabe Schwartz,
swore.
Jesus. Like when I see you do something like that, I'm like, I gotta check this out. Because I'm not a huge gamer anymore, but like when I see things like that, or like your 200th episode, or stuff that I see, and I'm like, hey, this is cool. This is different. I'm always gonna check that out. The Captain N stuff I love because I'm just like, it's so ridiculous and silly that I'm just like,
It's
and
my
I think
favorite too, man.
and I think it's so lame that I'm like, I gotta see this. Like, I gotta check this out.
Such
So
a
that's,
good show. Well, by good I mean awful.
it's so bad it's good, but I mean
Yeah.
that's definitely, I mean, looking at my top 5, like that's for sure. Like I listen to a lot of the my horror anthology podcasts have become kind of like my my favorite main podcast. I don't listen to as much. Like, you know, Joe Rogan definitely would be in my top 10, you know, because I love listening to him mainly talk
as
with
much
his
as I
buddies, you know.
as much as I dislike a lot of his viewpoints, he's a very good, like I've said before, he's a
Yeah.
very good he's a very good interviewer, he's a very good podcaster. I mean, it makes sense though. He fucking does it like you know, he releases 3 episodes a week or every day a week.
But you know what's really funny? I went back today to episode 3 and 1 and 2, and I think I'm at episode like 20 right now of his podcast. And he was pretty much the same back then.
Okay.
He just, obviously he's more refined because he's doing actual interviews now, but like, man, he had it back then. You could hear it. Like, it's just like, it's such an entertaining conversation. It's just them bullshitting on a couch. And he's still doing the same thing. Yeah, they just have
some
it.
people just have the voice.
Yeah.
Some people just have that talent to do it.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned wrestling though, I was going to bring up, I don't watch wrestling. Like I've never
Mm-hmm.
really watched wrestling.
Yeah.
But I found on YouTube the WWE has a bunch of old matches, and there was like a 30-person, not a cage match. It was like a 30-person Royal Rumble.
Yep.
And from like 96 or 98 or something like that. So I watched all that. It literally, it started out so slow for me. I'm like, I don't get why people like this. Like, this is really fucking cheesy. But then by the end of it, I wasn't into it, but I was like, all right, this is actually kind of fun. I kind of like
And that's
this.
like, I mean, if you were to say to me, hey, TJ, send me some stuff that makes you love pro wrestling. I mean, like, I wouldn't send you a Royal Rumble match. I'd send you a bunch of stuff that's like more, you know, like, that shows off the real art form of professional wrestling and why it's so great.
You know what, dude? After this, send me something. Like if you can find it on YouTube, send me like
okay.
the match.
I'll see what I can find. I'll send you some stuff.
Because I legit watched the whole. It was like an hour long. I watched the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I watched the whole thing, but I watched the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But okay, so for me with my podcast listening statistics, I use an app called Podcast Addict. And I fucking love this app because it's free to use. And what it does is that it calculates it down to the hours and sometimes even minutes of how much you listen. So in 2020, now mind you, I work an 8-hour shift at my job and I can listen to podcasts almost the entire time while I'm there. I mean, obviously nice. I do pause for when I'm on phone calls and when I'm in meetings, and obviously if I'm focusing on something that's like requires a lot of attention, but by and large I can listen to podcasts all day long while I'm there. In 2020 I listened to 41 days and 1 hour worth of podcasts.
Wow.
41 days.
Holy shit.
Now with that said, we still have another, basically 20 some odd days at the time of this recording, about 20 some odd days before the end of the month. What do you want to guess my total number of, it's days, obviously, days of listening is for this year so far? And if you can get the hours too, I would be good. But
give me the first number again? You said the one
so
from last year?
2020, I listened to 41 days and 1 hour worth of podcasts over the course of 816 episodes.
I'm going to say you went up. And I'm going to say, I'm going to say like 47 days and like 2 hours.
It's actually only 40 days. Only 40.
Oh, you went down. Okay.
So remember, I worked from home for 3 months taking care of the baby.
I forgot about that.
So for 3 months, I didn't listen to many podcasts. So I actually gained ground considerably, if you think about it that way.
Well, there you go. So I have just started using Podcast Addict again. I used to use it all the time. Where are you finding this information? Because if you're in the app, the little if you're on the main menu where you see all of your podcast thumbnails and stuff like that, in the top right there's like the 3 dots. Yeah.
Go to app settings. I'm sure this is riveting for our listeners. And then from that app settings you click on my account. And then you go all the way to the bottom, you scroll down and there's a playback statistics.
Aha.
Now, what's cool, so this is on
embarrassing.
I'm looking at the well, dude, I listen to 8 hours a day.
I just downloaded this app like a month ago, so I'm not that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, well, and actually, mind you, this is I found a way that you can transfer your data from phone to phone. You can actually export like your statistics and add it to, like, say you get a new phone and you want to keep all your listening statistics, you can actually export them and add it and send the
No
file and
shit.
open
There
it
you
up on
go.
your new phone. So this is actually the statistics I have for here are from 2 phones worth now from like 3 years ago. So I'll give my total total number of days listening globally between this year, last year, 2019, I think even into 2018 a little bit. But so in the month of November of this year, because it only shows the last 2 months that you've listened to in terms of specific hours, and then it gives you the yearly total. So, like I said, 40 days and 14 hours is my total in 2021. In November, I had 6 days and 1 hour over the course of 111 episodes. So far in December, we're 8 days into it now. That gives a very specific date when we're recording this. Um, it is 1 day and 14 hours over the course of 31 episodes.
Holy
And
shit.
yeah. So yeah. Now over globally, all the out of all the podcasts I've listened to over the last 3 years, I've spent 217 days and 8 hours.
Wow.
I don't know. See, I'm reading this off and all I can picture is a listener being like, "What a fucking loser."
Well, no, like listen, like you can
That's why
listen
I
to it
had
all day at work, right?
That's why I clarify it, because
Yeah.
I listen to it like, if I wasn't for work, I'd only be able to listen during my commutes, and that's it.
Pretty much same here. Like I can listen to it at my one part of my job. So like my podcast listening time has definitely gone way down from what it was because I used to have an hour commute, right? So I'd
Mhm.
listen to podcasts all the way home, all the way there, all the time I was at my job. Whereas now I only really have about 2 hours a day, hour and a half or so, maybe to listen to podcasts. So I'm very picky with what I
Meanwhile, I
listen
have,
to now.
like, 9 and a
Yeah.
half hours to listen to podcasts. It's wild. Between my commutes and because I have a long commute too.
Yeah.
The amount of time that I've skipped globally, because I skip through the ads and stuff like that,
Mhm.
1 day and then 1 hour of skipping
Jeez.
at,
That
like,
seems
30
crazy.
seconds a clip. Um, Today alone, because I worked today, I listened to 7 hours and 7 minutes worth of podcasts over the course of 6 episodes.
Jeez.
So, if we look at my numbers for the year, my top listened to podcasts, let me see, 1, 2, 3,
The
4,
Hodder
5,
Show.
6,
No, I'm kidding.
7. We're gonna go with my top 10. One of them is my own because I mark. You download the episode for your number. I don't actually re-listen to every episode.
Mhm.
So I'm not. It's technically within my top 10, but I'm not counting it. I'm just adding another one
Yeah.
underneath it.
Yeah.
And one of them is, and two of these in here are linked together because one is the original feed and the other is is a Patreon RSS feed.
Yeah.
So at number 10 is Land Parties Pod, where I've spent 1 day and 7 hours listening to it this year. That shout out to my boy Lucas and Ryan, my boys, excuse me, Lucas and Ryan over at Land Parties Pod. They had me on their podcast a couple weeks ago. Fantastic podcast that interviews cool people in the game industry. After that is the Online Warriors podcast, also friends of the show, 1 day and 9 hours for them. After that, so at number 8 is Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which is a Scrubs rewatch podcast. I'm a huge Scrubs fan, and I'm way behind on the show. I haven't listened to much of anything this year. I'm like 6 months behind, but even so, I still listen to them 1 day and 9 hours worth to put them in at 8th place. At number 7 is my friends over at the Taste of Dragons podcast. They're a fantastic gaming podcast as well. Um, number well, hold on. 10, 9, 8, 7. So 6 is a podcast called Tell 'em Steve Dave, which is from Kevin Smith's friends. Brian Johnson. Actually, do you know the show Impractical Jokers?
Yep.
Brian Quinn is one of the co-hosts of it.
Oh,
Q
okay.
is one
Right
of the
on.
co-hosts of it. 2 days and 9 hours for them. Broad Street Hockey. It's a Flyers podcast. Hockey, Philadelphia Flyers podcast. 2 days, 21 hours. Comedy Bang Bang. That's one of my favorite podcasts of all time. 3 days, 3 hours. Um, that's at number 4. Number 3 is actually a podcast I just started listening to this year, but they release 3 episodes a week. So their numbers, even
Holy
though I've
cow.
only been listening to them for like maybe 4 months, they're at 3 days and 3 hours because they literally do an episode Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I hate the Friday one though because it always comes out at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm already home from work, so I have to find a way to listen to it over the course of the weekend. Number two is the Completely Unnecessary podcast, which is Pat the NES Punk, another video game podcast. Pat the NES Punk and his friend Ian. They talk about like kind of retro gaming news, almost like what stuff that's happening in. It's not just like here's the new games coming out. It's like advancements in like retro game tech, like playing old games on modern TVs and shit, and like video game history to an extent, and covering just stuff going on, like drama in the game and in the
Okay.
retro game community, but not always drama. They're not a drama podcast, just to be very clear. They talk about the big stuff, but they don't go and talk about like what's this YouTuber doing or shit like that. Number one with a bullet between their RSS feed and their main feed is Retronauts. That's over 7 days.
Wow.
So it jumps from 3 days to Retronauts. I listen to so much because they just are. I love retro gaming podcasts. They're a fantastic retro gaming podcast. I tried. Sometimes I feel like my show borrows a little bit too much from them, but I also do a lot of different things that they don't do. I cover modern games. I do those, like I did that first music showcase episode this year. I did an improv episode. I do like I tried different things like that. So it's not necessarily just specific retro gaming topics, but it is a lot of retro gaming on the show. But yeah, so that's number one with a bullet. And what do you know? Retronauts was also number one last year. Um,
I
but
sense a theme here.
well, it's nuts. Is then it shows your global amount of time, like between everything. I'm not going to read all of mine, um, but like Comedy Bang Bang is at number 3 with 17 days. That's over the last 3 years. Broad Street Hockey is at number 2 with 18 days, and then Retronauts is number 1 with 29 days.
Holy cow! So yeah, you can tell
A full month of my life has been spent listening to Retronauts.
God.
All while working or driving though, so it's not like it's not like I'm just sitting at home being like
staring at this. That's one thing that I think is so funny with podcasts that people don't understand. Like they're like, "Well, what do I do?" I'm like, you put it on while you're doing stuff.
Do your laundry. I do it while
Yeah.
washing. I listen to them while washing dishes sometimes.
Yeah, same here.
Or
when I'm
mowing the
doing
lawn.
chores, yeah.
The summer, that's a great time. The summer, well, when my kid, the 3 months while my kid was born, the only time I could really listen to podcasts was mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for me to mow the lawn, so I get a couple hours to be able to do it. So anyway, we're going at almost 2 hours, man. We have been going for a long fucking time. Do you have
What else did we expect?
I know it's two podcasters rambling about like their years, so of course it's going to go long. But what are some of your final thoughts, man? What are some final thoughts on 2021, and what do you want to accomplish in 2022?
2021, it's been an interesting year. There's been a lot of great stuff that happened to me. The equipment upgrades I've had this year, I'm really looking forward to 2022 for a lot of reasons, not just to do with podcasting, but like I'm hoping, I can keep improving. I'm hoping I can keep making content that people want to check out. I hope I can keep trying out these different segments that I've done, which is something I completely forgot to mention. But, I've done these fun little segment episodes. That's something I'm going to be doing going forward because they're fun. And something I definitely want to accomplish next year is I want to do more in-person stuff. I think that it's time to start branching out to more people. One thing I want to do is I want to talk to more local businesses and stuff like that. That's something I really want to start doing to get my name out more locally here in my town, because there's no one around really doing it that I think, is doing it the proper way. So it's like, hey, let's, instead of worrying about talking to quote unquote famous people and shit like that, like, let me talk to people who, I can really connect with in person. And, I'm hoping I can have a little studio room coming up here in the next couple of months. So we'll see. But, I want to keep growing. And there's nothing really crazy that I have kind of planned heading into the year. You know, there's a couple of projects I'm working on slowly that, you know, might launch next year. So I'm looking forward to that, but nothing I can really say yet because it's way too early. But I'm going to keep plugging along and, you know, just keep doing my thing. And, you know, I always look forward to doing these with you and, you know, getting to kind of look back on the year. It's become tradition, man. And I always look forward to it.
I know. I think one of the things that I like about this is that it's a tradition. Like we kind of have a way to. It's like I said before. It's our way to finally be able to podcast together.
Yes.
On even though it's only once a year, at least it's something better than nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, my only goal is just I think I said it on another episode, maybe the 200. I don't think it was on the 200th. I forget what episode I said it on, but I want kind of like what you did with your audio drama, like your horror
Mm-hmm.
episode, where you read your own script and you kind of produced it like an audio drama.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that. There's a short story that I found through a different podcast, which is another great show. It's a fantastic podcast called LeVar Burton Reads. If you loved Reading Rainbow, LeVar Burton's the host of Reading Rainbow. If you remember that show as a kid,
right.
He reads adult science fiction, adult as in like, you know, it's not sexual, it's not triple X like adult, but you know, science fiction, and it's short fiction stories for adults, and it's really good. Obviously he's an actor, so he knows what he's doing, but it's super well produced, and it's a fantastic podcast. They're like 30 to 40 minutes a piece, and they're just excellent. And he read a story on there that is video game related, and I thought it would be perfect to do on the podcast. And I think I'm going to record it, and then hopefully if I like it, then I'm going to reach out to the author and ask for permission to do it. If he says no, I know I did all that work for nothing, but it's like I would rather do all that work for nothing than get permission from him and then never have it come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I
Still
just feel
do it for the challenge of it, right? That's
exactly. So
yeah.
that's what I'm challenging myself. Before the end of 2022, I need to have that episode out, and that's been hard for me because I don't know how I'm going to do it. Not in terms of like how I'm going to get it out by 2022. I just have no idea how I'm going to do the episode. Period.
Yeah.
So, but that's my challenge for myself. That's what I want to do this year. So, let's wrap this episode up. TJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. And of course, as usual, thank you for being a friend. Listeners,
Of course, brother.
Sincerely, thank you so much for being with me this entire year. It's truly meant the world to me. And this year, like I said before, has been one of the toughest of my life, but it's been one of the most rewarding because I have found myself more productive than ever, despite having more anxiety than ever in my life. So it really, truly means a lot that you set aside time to listen to this show and you listen to my ramblings, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I like doing this as just kind of like a self-reflection thing. More, like I said, I hope if it comes off as any type of arrogance, just send me a DM. I promise I won't bite your head off. I'd like to. I'd be willing to take that constructive criticism. I like doing this because it's a method of self-reflection for me.
If you message Josh and say that he was self-indulgent in any way, I'll bite your head off. Don't call
he'll do
Josh. I'll drive to where you are. Listen, I'm
well,
talking.
No, you're from
to
Canada.
you.
You'll ride a moose there.
I'm talking to you right now. Listen, you, the one who's going to message Josh and say, you know, I thought you were a little too self-indulgent on your end of the year retrospective podcast. I will find you. You can't hide from me because I have moose vision or goose vision. I will find you. And I will honk you.
Well, thank you for the support, DJ.
Anytime, man.
But no, seriously, thank you all for listening. It really means the world. TJ, do you have any final words to wrap up 2021?
Just thank you so much again, my man. As always,
you freaked me out there. You completely were paused. And I'm like, did I lose? Did he lose connection?
What the last like 30 seconds? What the hell? No, sorry.
You were like a statue.
I did it for the lull. Sorry. I just want to say thank you again, man, as always, for having me on for this. It's so much fun and getting to chat with you. And I appreciate your friendship, you know, especially now, you know, over the last four 5 years, whatever the
4
hell now.
fucking years,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy, man. It's crazy. And congratulations for the year you've had. I know it's been a tough year for you with everything, but I mean, you've had a lot of really cool stuff happen. I can't wait to do this again next year and talk about how much growth you've had, and and some cool stuff happening for sure.
Thanks, man. Thank you. And thank you once again, listeners, for listening. TJ, where can the good people find you online?
If you go on Google and you type in the Hodder Show, I will pop up now. Facebook, Instagram, the Hodder Show. It's HODDER, the Hodder Show. Spotify is usually how I plug the show. Spotify, you can go on there. I'm doing these fun little things now where if you listen to an episode on Spotify and actually click on the description, there might be like a Q&A thing in there, or like a poll
I
or
heard that
something
you can
like
do that
that.
through Anchor
Yes,
now.
and it's
Yeah.
really fun. I love it. I try to be active on social media, but also the YouTube thing, and obviously Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podcast Addict, which is a fantastic app, which you should go check out. You guys are sponsored Still Learning Podcast. And, just keep supporting the indie podcasts of the world, man. People like myself and Josh, like, you've heard us talk about how much we love doing this and how much we put into it. And it means so much to us just to have even one person listen, and it makes us feel
It really
so
does.
good. And you can be a part of our community, and you can be as much really a part of this community as we are. So just thank you, everybody, for listening to this and for supporting me and for supporting Josh. And Josh, thank you so much, man, as always, for all of your support.
Of course, man. And I should have known this episode was going to be long because we're at over 2 hours. So this is going to be a bitch to edit. But no, as usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use, because that helps more people find the show. If you want to support it monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and get some nice benefits on top of it. For $1 a month, you'll get the episodes a couple days early, as well as at a higher bit rate. And for $5 a month, you'll get all of that. Oh, actually, sorry, $1 a month, you get that and access to a patron exclusive Discord. At the $5 a month rate, you will get all of that, the patron exclusive Discord, the episodes early at a higher bit rate, but also 2 extra bonus episodes on a month that are released on Fridays. They're usually pretty small, like 15 minutes to maybe 40 minutes, but I try to do interesting topics. I did a retro magazine review where I found an old video game magazine in my collection, and I just went through it and read some of the weird shit that they were doing on there. And then I also did an episode called I forgot what I called it, but basically it was all about how Nintendo squeezed extra power out of the NES when it wasn't designed to handle it. They added extra hardware to every single game cartridge for some games in order to get games to run on it. For example, Super Mario Bros. 3, if it wasn't for the extra processor chip they added to the Mario 3 cartridges, it would not be able to run on the original Nintendo because it was too advanced. So those chips, by adding them to every cartridge, expanded the life cycle of the NES. So stuff like that, like things that aren't quite big enough for an episode, but I still find interesting and want to cover. So
Stuff that's super interesting to hear for sure.
well, hopefully people find it interesting. I find it interesting, but patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But besides all of that, if you only have limited funds and you're willing to part with some of it, don't give it to me. Go to the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of children receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So if you want to go support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for 2021 for the Hodder Show, for the Still Loading podcast. I don't know why I said it's just for Still Loading podcast. Thank you all for listening. It's been truly an honor this year. It's been one of my favorite years, despite all the stress that I mentioned before. So, TJ, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, man. Always fun. I appreciate you, brother.
And thank you all for listening. I will see you all in 2022. I guess, really, I'll see you all next time.